Hi everyone, I'm Karan and welcome to Karan's Gyan. The stock on focus for today is Indiabulls Housing Finance. On Friday, which is June 19th, a news came that uh, Morgan Stanley Asia has bought about 45 lakh shares of the company at the rate of 185 rupees per share, because of which India Bulls housing jumped 31% on Friday and another 23% today on Monday. Today, the date is 22nd June. Now you see it has jumped almost 60%. This is how it has jumped. June 19th, the deal took place, and it has jumped from about, I would say, 150 rupees to 203 right now. So, Indiabulls Housing Finance has had such a sharp jump. It's because Indiabulls Housing Finance was facing some financial troubles lately. And since Morgan Stanley, which is a very big investment fund, since Morgan Stanley feels that Indiabulls Housing Finance might be done with their troubles. And since Morgan Stanley, such an intelligent player, such a respected player in the industry of share market, if they feel that mm, Indiabulls Housing Finance is a good bet, that means market should also change their view. However, if you see, this transaction isn't much. This transaction is about 83 crores, whereas the market capitalization of Indiabulls Housing Finance is 10,000 crores. But you need to consider this. It's something that a person is thinking. Like, a Morgan Stanley is a big player. A lot of times, what happens is Rakesh Jhunjhunwala buys a stake in the company. Since Rakesh Jhunjhunwala is considered a stock market king, a lot of investors respect Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. So they think if Rakesh Jhunjhunwala has invested in a company, that company might be something. If that company is a troubled company, it can be a signal that maybe the company is gonna make through out of the troubled waters, or if the company has already made through the troubled waters. So that is what you need to understand when a big heavy duty investor, which is Morgan Stanley Asia. As you know, Morgan Stanley is a very big bank, and Morgan Stanley Asia, which is Singapore branch, it is a investment side of the bank. So that investment side of the bank has made a bet on how Indiabulls Housing Finance. So it might mean something. All right. But you just need to keep in mind that Indiabulls Housing Finance has been having some trouble for the past few months. What Indiabulls Housing Finance is doing is, it people think Indiabulls Housing Finance would default. So what these housing finance companies do is, these housing finance companies, they borrow money from the market. They borrow money from banks or the public. Suppose they borrow money from the banks or public at 6% interest per annum. All right, now they've got borrowed money. They would lend this borrowed money to people who are seeking housing finance. Or as a result, they would they would lend out this money. They lend out the money they borrowed from the public at 10%. So they are borrowed the money at 6%, and they are lending out the same money at 10%. They're getting a net interest margin of 4%. This net interest margin is their profit. All right. So this is what housing finance companies do. However, housing finance itself as an industry has been facing a lot of problems. This started with India. This started with DHFL, ILNFS. DHFL is Diwan Housing Finance Limited. ILNFS. So what happened then was, these companies, they took a lot of loans from the public, and they ended up giving a lot of bad loans. Uh, because they ended up giving a lot of bad loans, and as a result, they they had some risk they shouldn't have had. And since they have borrowed money and they're lending out the borrowed money, there is a risk problem. There's a risk problem. There's a problem if you look at from the risk perspective. The problem is you are borrowing money and you're lending out the borrowed money. It is not your money that you're lending out. So if tomorrow the money that you have lent out, all right, if you have given a person a loan for building a house, tomorrow that person A goes bankrupt and he says, I can't pay you back your loan. You you won't be able to pay back the money to the people you borrowed from. So you know, housing finance companies have a problem of leverage. They basically leverage themselves a lot, and if there is a downturn in the market, the leverage can destroy the company, and that's the problem in the housing finance. A lot of people thought that housing finance, Indiabulls Housing Finance, would default on their debts. By default on the debt means the money which they have borrowed from the market, the money which they have borrowed from the public, they would default on paying interest or principal payments on the debt, and that is a red flag. That means the company is failing. If the company doesn't have any money to give back to its borrowers, the company's reputation is on stake. The company is, no one would lend the money anymore, and since this is a housing finance company, um, it won't be able to raise money from the market, and as a result it can't ramp up their businesses, and they can't ramp up their business operations, and they are in big trouble. All right, so before thinking about investing in the stock, I'm not asking you to invest in the stock. This is just the stock of the day, because this has been in news for the couple of days. It has jumped 60% in 2 days, so there might be something up with it. I wanted to note this paragraph. So this is a very important paragraph. I told you how Indiabull Housing Finance borrows money from the market and lends it to its clients. So domestic rating agency ICRA expects that the impact of the pandemic on the livelihood of the end borrowers could be severe, leading to the asset quality related issues for housing finance players. So, what this means is Indiabulls Housing Finance has borrowed money from the market, which it lends to end borrowers who are their clients. And as a result, since there has been a pandemic, their livelihood is in trouble. And since their livelihood is in trouble, they are more likely to default on their loans. And if they are likely to default on their loans, Indiabulls Housing Finance Company is going to default on their loan. So if Indiabulls Housing Finance client, if they default, if they say we can't pay you back the money which we owe you, Indiabulls Housing Finance would default on its debt to the market. It won't be able to pay the money it had borrowed from the market, from the banks or from the public. Okay. Um, just a little highlight about the the more about Indiabulls Housing Finance. It has market capitalization of 10,000 crores, PE of 4.9, book value of 403. Now, what I mean by book value is it is basically what is the value of every share based on the assets it has. So, if I see the amount of assets the company has divided by number of shares the company has, that will give me the book value. Alright, the price to book value is 0.61 as of now. That means the price of the share that is going on, it is cheaper than the assets it has, because the market feels that its assets here in this case are the loans it has distributed to the you know the end borrowers, to its clients. So those are their assets. So it feels that maybe they won't get their assets back. The end borrowers are not likely to pay them back. So hence the market feels that this is what the price should be, because they feel the book value is going to decrease in the future, and hence 0.61 is the price to book value. Yeah, and Morgan Stanley Asia would obviously have taken this into consideration and made their bets appropriately. But yet, keep researching about Indiabulls Housing Finance, and if you feel there's an opportunity to buy Indiabulls, um, research a little more, and if you feel it's a good investment, go ahead and buy. But what I feel is, as of now, you gotta wait and watch. You gotta wait for this pandemic to get over for you to invest in any housing finance companies. All right, guys, this is it.